Hare Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai.
Haribol.
All glories to the assembly.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembly.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembly. All glories to Shri Guru Gauranga.
Haribol.
Today I was going to speak a little bit about fearlessness. Let me just, and I'm getting there. I like that the carpet is here because it allows me to be able to dance. I can't dance on a hard floor anymore. My feet are completely gone. If I'm in shoes on a harinam or something, I can chant like anything, but on the hard floor, I just can't do it. So, we are going to read from the 12th chapter, 15th verse, I believe. Okay, yes, here we are. Yasman no vijate loko, lokan no vijate ichaya, harsham harsha vayod vegair muktoya sachame priyaha. He by whom no one is put into difficulty, and who is not disturbed by anyone, who is equipoised in happiness and distress, fear and anxiety, is very dear to me. Please repeat. He by whom no one
is
put into difficulty,
and
who is not disturbed by anyone, who is equipoised in happiness and distress,
He is equipoised in happiness and distress.
fear and anxiety,
is
very dear to me.
very dear to me.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada. A few of a devotee's qualifications are further being described. No one is put into difficulty, anxiety, fearfulness, or dissatisfaction by such a devotee. Since a devotee is kind to everyone, he does not act in such a way as to put others. 12:15. Yeah. Since a devotee is kind to everyone, he does not act in such a way as to put others into anxiety. At the same time, if others try to put a devotee into anxiety, he is not disturbed. It is by the grace of the Lord that he is so practiced that he is not disturbed by any outward disturbance. Actually, because a devotee is always engrossed in Krishna consciousness and engaged in devotional service, such material circumstances cannot move him. Generally, a materialistic person becomes very happy when there is something for his sense gratification and his body. But when he sees that others have something for their sense gratification and he hasn't, he is sorry and envious. When he is expecting some retaliation from an enemy, he is in a state of fear. And when he cannot successfully execute something, he becomes dejected. A devotee who is always transcendental to all these disturbances is very dear to Krishna. Om Adhyana Timrandasya Dhyana Janana Shlakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stabhidam Dena Bhutale Swayam Bhaktamayam Dadati svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Padakam Shri Guru Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Savijatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamani Karipriye Vanchakalurvyascha Kripa Sindhu Yevacha Patitanam Mahalivyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vaisali Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, he by whom no one is put into difficulty and who is not disturbed by anyone, who is equipoised in happiness and distress, fear and anxiety, is very dear to me. So at the very beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, right at the beginning, after Arjuna had completely opened his heart that he didn't want to fight because he felt that it was not going to be good for the general population. And he gave so many reasons why. There would be Varna Sankara, the unwanted population, and there would be the women would be unprotected, and so many social things would simply crumble. So the whole social order would crumble because of this battle, because so many men were about to die in that battle. And Krishna immediately tells Arjuna, Ashochan and Vashochastvang Pragyabadang Stravasate, that while speaking learned words, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. So Arjuna was in that position where he was lamenting for not just the living, but those who were about to die. And so he was telling Krishna that I feel this is morally wrong, that I engage in this battle. And so he really became morose and completely dejected, as Prabhupada talks about in the verse here. He mentions that word dejected, that if one cannot achieve something, if he cannot successfully execute something, he becomes dejected. So Arjuna was in that position where he was feeling that I cannot execute the order to go and fight because of all these considerations, these moral and material considerations. And so Krishna immediately set him on the right path. He said, you are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor the dead. So right away, Krishna's saying to Arjuna that these material moral considerations are nothing to be worried about. They arise from social order, from the interaction of the modes of material nature, and therefore they do not have anything to do with the soul, who we really are, and who, in the case of Arjuna, he was on the battlefield, he's looking at all these men, and rather than thinking of them as spirit souls, he was thinking of them as Kshatriyas, as warriors, as people who had families, and they were husbands to wives, and so he was lamenting that he was going to be causing so much distress. But Krishna immediately told him, no, don't worry about those things. Because you are a spirit soul. And actually. Krishna says in one of the very next verses, Natvevaham jatunasam natvam neme janadipa nachaivanavavishama sarve vayamatakram. Never was there a time that I did not exist. Krishna is saying this, that I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So right away, Krishna's establishing the eternality of the soul. And so all these considerations, like somebody being a husband to somebody, and that's all a temporary situation. It has nothing to do with the eternal soul. And so Krishna is immediately starting to straighten out Arjuna and getting him to understand that to perform his duty as a Kshatriya, especially since especially since he's fighting on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now we have a situation in the material world right now, and there have been many, and there is still going on, where there's these differences of religion, right? And so they're having a big war over it, and really, these religions have originated from the same place. They believe in Abraham, the prophet, the great devotee of Krishna, actually, Abraham. And those religions are actually based on his teachings. The whole Old Testament and everything that Christianity, even Christ said, I come not to change the old law, but to just add on the new law. And the new law, what is it? That know, love, and serve God with your whole heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And so, even in the Old Testament, very similar things have been said. That there shouldn't be this bodily distinction. Actually, the Bible does sort of talk a bit about that, not very clearly, not as clearly as the Bhagavad Gita for sure. But it definitely gets people to understand that there needs to be this distinction between the body and the spirit. And actually, I don't know if I've told this particular story before, but in the hospital one time, there was a 16-year-old boy who he had a previous heart transplant, lung transplant, because he had cystic fibrosis. And as some of you may know, cystic fibrosis is a disease where the lungs are constantly filling up with mucus, and there's digestive problems and other things. But the lungs often tend to go first. And so in his case, his lungs actually gave out very young, and he had his first lung transplant when he was 11 years old. So now this second pair of lungs was also starting to give out, which happens sometimes with donated organs. And because of the difficulty of the lungs, and he still had cystic fibrosis. Just getting a new pair of lungs doesn't cure your cystic fibrosis. So he came to the hospital when he was, I think he was 15 years old, 15 or 16. And he was very short of breath. And the doctors right away said, if you don't get a new pair of lungs within the next month or two, you're probably going to die. So he immediately started to think, I went through a lot of hell to get this set of lungs, the bad ones that were going bad. And after I'd had the surgery, it took a long time to recover and everything else. And he was feeling that he just didn't want to go through that again. And so he told his parents, he said, I don't want to have another lung transplant. And the parents were, as you can imagine, they were just distraught. They felt that they're going to lose their son. mean, all of us who have children, or, you know, if you have anybody that you love in the world, and I'm sure we all have loved ones, if you feel that you're going to lose that loved one, it's a very distressing situation, right? So the parents were completely distressed that they were going to lose their son. And I saw this conversation happen on the first day, and then on the second day I happened to be in the room when they were discussing this with their son. And I talked to them a little bit, just about, I mean, as people normally do in hospitals, you know, you just talk about the weather or whatever, you know, trying to make small talk. But I was looking for a way to try to inject a little bit of spiritual understanding into the situation. So the parents were again on the second day appealing to their son, please just have the transplant, and you know, you'll have more years, and these lungs, the newer lungs may be better, and things will be fine, and you can go on living, and we can enjoy each other's association. And he was just like, no, I really can't. I don't want to. And so they kind of just said, okay, we'll talk about it tomorrow. And they left the room, and they were crying profusely. And he was also feeling very distressed that his parents were going to force him to possibly have the transplant. And so I managed to follow them out into the hallway, and I approached them, I said, excuse me? And they said yes. And I mean, they were very nice people. And I just said, are you spiritual in any way? And they said, yes, definitely, we're spiritual. And I said, so, do you understand that that your son, that you are eternal souls? And they said, yes. And then I said, and you understand your son is an eternal soul? And they said, yes. And so can you understand that this eternal soul is asking you to not put him through this suffering in this body again, just to try to live a little longer? And I said, and I'm not a chaplain here or anything, but I'm just trying to, you know, maybe give a little perspective. And I sort of, you know, I was like cringing because I didn't want to be stepping on anybody's toes, you know, getting too religious or anything. If you come across as, I was a respiratory therapist in the intensive care unit at Sick Children's. And so I didn't want to be too preachy because, you know, they don't want you to do that in the hospital. But if you're a chaplain, then you get to say things, spiritual things like that. But I just said, look, I'm not a chaplain, but I have a little bit of, and they had seen that I had a Hare Krishna shirt on and everything. And so they started thinking just for a few seconds, and they went, you know, you're right. He's an eternal soul. And so that if we're going to force him to go through this temporary suffering just so that he can stay with us, then we're being selfish. They felt that. It was like, I don't know, somehow or other, a light bulb went off in their heads, you know. And they a smile came across their faces, and they didn't just walk out the door, they actually went back into the room. And they got to their son and they said, Tommy, we're so sorry that we've been trying to force you to have this operation and to go through this suffering. But we understand that you will go on to another body and whatever, wherever you go, or to God, and we know that you'll be all right. You're eternal. You have nothing to do with this body. It was amazing. Like, they just started speaking like transcendentally, and I only said a few words. And so he immediately, a smile came upon his face, and the whole situation just completely changed. And for the next few days they came in, they enjoyed each other's association. There wasn't the crying and lamenting, and it was really incredible. It just flipped the whole thing, and he did die about 3 or 4 weeks after that. So It's this understanding that we are spirit souls, that Krishna was trying to tell Arjuna, that we are spirit souls and we have nothing to do with these material situations. So that your fear of causing some social damage by engaging in this battle are unfounded. So let's not go there. And then as we know, Krishna goes through the whole Bhagavad Gita, instructing Arjuna as to what is the actual goal of life, that what is the spirit soul meant to do. And the spirit soul, as we know, is manmana bhava madbhakto madhyajimam namaskuru, that just fix your mind upon me and become my devotee. That is the essence of spiritual life, is fixing our mind on Krishna and engaging in his devotional service. And there are so many ways to engage in his devotional service. And when we start to engage in devotional service, we can actually become fearless. We can, Srila Prabhupada is talking about in the purport here, and Krishna also in the verse, is talking about some of the dualities of the material nature. So he, one who is equipoised in happiness and distress. You know, happiness and distress are coming to us all the time, right? I mean, we wake up in the morning, and especially as you get older, you start waking up in the morning and immediately you're going, ooh, I'm distressed this morning. Well, I got this ache and this pain. You know, there's just something happening all the time. When you're young, it's not so bad. You just wake up in the morning, woo, it's another day. So that's the happiness, and as you get older, you start feeling the distress. And fear and anxiety. You know, in the world today, there is so much fear and anxiety. I mean, in, you know, parts of the world now, so many people are fearing that they're going to starve to death. I mean, and you know, all of a sudden there's a new part of the world that's starving to death. You know, it's like the people in Afghanistan were starving, and they're still starving. And there's people in Africa where there are civil wars going on who are still starving. And yet, because of the focus on a new place where people are starving, you know, there's all this. So there's just like so many people that are starving, that are just having difficulty finding anything to eat. And we know that Srila Prabhupada often talks about why do we engage so hard in making our economic situation good? Because the elephants are out there, they just walk around and they get enough to eat every day, and they eat a lot, right? And even the little birds, you know, they just flying around, and they eat a lot too compared to their weight. You know, sometimes I think like a little chickadee has to eat like 3 or 4 times its weight every day or something in seeds in order to, you know, keep going and keep himself warm. And they stay often here through the whole winter. And yet they have to generate that heat, so they have to eat a lot. So there's all these you know, things that are happening in the nature where Krishna's taking care of everything. And yet we're thinking that I have to take care of myself. Right? We're not thinking that Krishna is the caretaker. We're thinking, no, I have to make this arrangement and that arrangement. Now, I'm not saying that we should all just go, okay, Krishna, take care of me. I'm surrendered to you. I'm not going to do anything. You take care of me. That's not what surrender means. I mean, we can still make the arrangements, but what we do is we make the arrangements with the understanding that I am sacrificing this for Krishna. And each one of us sacrifices to Krishna in our own way, and we know exactly how much we can give and how much we can't give. And we're always encouraging. This is something that Sankirtan devotees do all the time, you know. Give the most you can. Right? When we're asking somebody to give a donation on Sankirtan. And we should be giving the most we can. We should be trying to give to Krishna as much as possible. our time and our effort and our concentration, we should be focusing this on Krishna. And when we do that, then we actually come to the stage where we are becoming dependent on Krishna. And when you become dependent on Krishna, then Krishna helps. Krishna starts to take care of so many things. And he really does. And it may not be the material things, and it may not always come in a way that we see. Just like Purnamasi, she's not here today, but many of you know Purnamasi, my wife. And she suffered a stroke years ago. And sometimes you kind of go, I don't know why you did this, Krishna, but for some reason, here it is. And we've had to live with that situation. And Purnamasi has actually very much, when it was happening, I just remember saying to Purnamasi, this is the ball that Krishna has thrown us, and we just have to catch it and run with it. And we're going to do that, and we're going to be, I'm here for you, and I'll always be here for you, and we have our issues sometimes, like everybody, but Purnamasi definitely takes that situation that she's in, and she uses it in Krishna's service. She'll go out often with her wheelchair. She'll sit in her wheelchair, and a wheelchair is easier to push backwards than it is forwards when you're sitting in it. And so because she has one good leg, a lot of people who have both legs bad, they have to use their hands, and then often going forward is easier. But if you've got one good leg and you can push with that leg, and actually you can push yourself a lot easier pushing that way than you can by trying to grab the ground and pull it backwards. So she's pushing her way down the sidewalk, and people see her, and they immediately say, "Oh, can I help?" And they start to push her. And the amazing thing about devotional services is that as soon as somebody does something for a devotee, and honestly, we are all devotees, because Lord Chaitanya says that anybody who's chanted the holy name even once is a devotee of Krishna. And we're all trying to chant a little bit more every day, right? So we are all devotees. So anybody who does even a little bit of service for us, then they become qualified to start engaging in more devotional service. Krishna definitely gives them the initial opportunity of meeting a devotee, and then of rendering a little bit of service. And then because they render that little bit of service, they actually get an opportunity to get more service down the line. And Purnamasi definitely engages them in more service, because she generally, almost always, has books with her. And so she'll take out a book and say, "Thank you very much for helping me, and here, you can take this book and get the most you can." And it's amazing how people take the book, and some of them give donations. We basically tell the people, and this is a good thing when you're out on Sankirtan, is you just say, "Look, the book is for you. I want you to have the book." And that's the way we should always be thinking. Like Srila Prabhupada was always thinking, how can I give people Krishna consciousness? So we really do want to give people Krishna. But most people are ready, willing to reciprocate. And so when we give Krishna in the form of a book, a lot of times they will readily take the book, and they will give something. Because you can even say, look, if you take this spiritual knowledge and you give a little token of your appreciation, then you will actually get more from the book. You'll actually get more knowledge, which is true. If they give a little reciprocation, then Krishna even, Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam, he gives the intelligence by which they can come to him. So if they perform that little bit of service, Krishna will give them the intelligence to come to him. And so it's just by performing these devotional activities, by giving people Krishna, and by dedicating our lives to Krishna, then these difficulties like happiness and distress, they actually start to become truly diminished. To the point where we can, I know that I'm getting on, I may not be as old as everybody in this room, but I'm 70 years old, so I'm getting up there. Right, my next birthday will be 70, if I live to see it, who knows. But you definitely, when you really start to get the understanding that I am a spiritual, eternal being, as Krishna says so often in the Bhagavad Gita, if I really begin to understand that, then the fear of death really starts to disappear. I mean, I'm still, if somebody's, if there's a car coming or something, it's like you make a little bit of a mistake at a stop sign and you start to pull out, and then all of a sudden this car is right there, and you like jam on the brakes, you kind of like a little bit, that was a little close, So I mean, there's still sort of that innate bodily fear of how we're going to die, but we're not so much afraid of death itself, because we're understanding. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Janma karma chmedevam evam yo veti tattva dehang punar janma naiti mam eti sorjuna, that one who understands the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving this body, take birth again in the material world, but attains to my supreme abode, O Arjuna. So we need to attain to that supreme abode by simply understanding the nature of Krishna's birth and activities. And so the Srimad Bhagavatam gives us so much information about the many different births of Krishna in many different incarnations and the transcendental activities of all those different incarnations. And then once reading through everything, you come up to the 10th canto, and then you actually start to hear directly about Lord Krishna's pastimes and activities. And one really begins to realize how great the Supreme Personality of Godhead is. And we know Srila Prabhupada wrote the Krishna book, and the Krishna book are actually the purports to the 10th canto. Srila Prabhupada did not know how long he would be on the planet. And so he wrote the Krishna book to make sure that people would properly understand Krishna's pastimes. And because there's so much misinterpretation of, say, the Rasa dance. There's so many paintings of the Rasa dance that are really just lusty garbage, But the proper devotional paintings of Krishna and Radharani show that it has nothing to do with sex. It has nothing to do with the material body. It has nothing to do with the lust that we feel in the material world. It's completely transcendental. It's described that the spiritual world is like the real tree, and there's a reflection in the material world. And so the most abominable thing in the material world is this illicit sex. But the most glorious thing in the spiritual world are the transcendental pastimes between Radha and Krishna, which have nothing to do with sex, by the way, but it's that counter position of the greatness of Krishna's pastimes, and just the horrible binding nature of sex in the material world that really binds us to our bodies and to this idea that I can enjoy my body. As long as we think we can enjoy our body, we're going to keep on enjoying bodies, life after life after life. We really have to come to the understanding that I am not this body, and that I can't enjoy this body. And how do we do that? We have to get, a param dristva nivartate. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that if we have this param dristva, if you have the higher taste, then you can give up the lower taste. So in the material body, you wake up as a baby and you start experiencing all these different sensual things, and some of them are good and some of them are bad, but you're thinking that some of them are enjoyable, and you're thinking that if I just get more of that, then I'll be happy. But it really is just, when you think about it, what is it? It's like my hand is just complete inert chemicals. Like if I separate it from my body, it has no consciousness. And so it's just like if you cut off your hand and you rub it around in a bunch of food, or you get it to do something like hit it on a typewriter or something. It's not doing anything, right? There's nothing there. And really, I talked about cutting off the hand, but actually we, as spirit souls, are actually cut off from this material body. And it's only the ahankar, the false ego, that's making us think that we're somehow connected, that this is me. But it's not me. And I cannot enjoy, this matter cannot enjoy other matter. It's a complete illusion. And that the real enjoyment only comes when we are actually enjoying on the spiritual platform. And how do we enjoy on the spiritual platform? I mean, one of the very easiest ways is just associating with Krishna through his holy name. Srila Prabhupada brought that process. Lord Chaitanya gave us that process 500 years ago of this Harinam Sankirtan. And we engage in that process also. Prabhupada brought the Sankirtan movement to the West. And also when we're chanting japa, we're engaging with Krishna and hearing his holy name and being with him. And when you are with Krishna, just like Arjuna, he had Krishna as his charioteer. And so after hearing he had all these doubts in the beginning, but after hearing the message of Bhagavad Gita, how that if he just surrenders completely, sarvadharman prityaja mamekam sharanam praja, aham sarvabhavyo moksha shamimasucha, that if you just surrender everything to me, I shall protect you from all sinful action. Do not fear. So immediately Arjuna understood, and he said, all right, I will act as your completely surrendered servant. I will do what is right. And because he was doing that, Arjuna felt completely fearless. He could go onto the battlefield and he knew that there's nothing that's going to happen to me. Even if something were to happen, hey, I'm a spirit soul anyway, and it really doesn't matter, right? So he's just ready to go. And we have to try to bring that spiritual understanding to ourselves and then share it as much as possible with others. Because that's what Srila Prabhupada did, and we are in Srila Prabhupada's movement. So we need to really try to give it to others. And when you give it to others, what we're doing is we're being a huge part of the solution, right? So many people in the material world are having all these material difficulties. And you hear that expression sometimes, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem, right? Everybody's probably heard that. So is there any solution in the material world which is really going to stop all this, hate and fear and death and destruction and starvation? And is there anything in the material world that's ever going to stop that? No. It's because everybody's functioning on the material platform, and the material platform means lust. And they just want more than, eventually want more than everybody else, and so there's this fighting and everything going on. But if we become part of the solution, which is to be spiritual, to really understand our spiritual natures and who we really are, and function on that platform, then we can give that same understanding to others in the form of Srila Prabhupada's books, or speaking to them, or giving them prasadam, or even just giving somebody a mantra card, with the holy name on it. And just say, look, if you just chant this a few times every day, and you'll find your life everything will start changing in your life. And it's true. As soon as people start chanting the holy name, Krishna just starts making arrangements for them to become more and more devoted. So we as Srila Prabhupada's instruments, as his devotees in this Krishna consciousness movement, we have to become convinced that we are spirit souls. We have to start functioning as complete spirit souls and not these bodies. And then we are actually empowered to go out and give this message and this joy, really, to everyone. And I think that, you know, it's not that we have to suddenly become completely self-realized in order to go out and give it to everybody. We can do that even when we're still taking the baby steps. You know, I'm still taking the baby steps in Krishna consciousness. But if we take baby steps, but we take a baby step forward in the solution, and we say, everybody that we meet, come on, take a baby step with me. If we just keep continuing taking baby steps together, then we're still part of the solution and we're not part of the problem. And then we can become truly happy, and we can all eventually live in the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead eternally and be eternally happy. So I guess I'll stop there, and then if there's any questions.
Well, you described quite well. It's nice about soul and everything you described. It's good. But the question is that the yoga is a place. Yes, not now with the fellow. Yoga now with this. He said you should speak, you know, in such a way that others' feelings are not injured.
That they're not
Injured.
injured, right.
And if any person speaks to you in an unbecoming way, then you should not feel it in a bad way.
Right, we should not react.
We should be tolerant.
Yeah,
And we should have a peaceful and calm mind.
yeah,
Main thing is this in Shilpa. You explained in quite a good way, that's nice. That's quite convincing, that's quite nice. But the main thing is that we should control our tongue.
right,
And we should speak in a good way. Others' feelings are not injured.
right.
And if anybody speaks to me, which is not to be appreciated, we should hear it and try to react to it
Yeah.
in a positive way.
And one who's spiritually advanced and in their understanding, like Srila Prabhupada was. I mean, Srila Prabhupada was perfectly on that platform. You can see the way he interacted with everybody. He never got angry, upset. He never, I mean, occasionally with his disciples, if somebody really did something that was, you know, he would chastise them strongly, and it appeared almost like upset. But Prabhupada could instantly sort of give them the sauce, but then turn it off the next second. He would be like, so come on, let's go. You know, and he would be their friend again immediately. You know, so it wasn't, Prabhupada was not affected by anger. Most of us, when we see that something doesn't go our way, you know, we get immediately angry, and we're affected by that anger for a long period of time. You know, the anger definitely is one of the emotions that affects you for a long time. But if we become truly spiritual in our understanding, then these things automatically become manifest in our personality. Because then we're really functioning on the spiritual platform. And so automatically all those interactions in the material world will just start to go so much more nicely. And I know that I'm not there myself yet, but I've definitely gotten more there than I was
You've done quite
50 years ago.
You have given us your life experience. Given a good example. Thank you very much.
Yes.
So, in the Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna to do his duty and fight as a warrior. So, what is our duty? Just like Arjuna was a warrior, what is our duty?
Right. Our duty, I mean, we have all our sort of material duties, but our main spiritual duty is really just to become a pure devotee. To come to that platform of being a Mahabhagavat. Somebody, or even at least coming to the stage of being a Madhyama Adhikari, or even a Kanishta Adhikari. And we've got to just try to perform some devotional service for Krishna. That is our duty. So if I'm, and really, so it boils down to something very simple in the sense that when you wake up, you think, what am I going to do for Krishna today? If your first thought is that, then Krishna will immediately go, don't worry, I've got plans for you, you know. And if we just go according to Krishna's plan, then everything will go not necessarily materially smoothly, but spiritually smoothly for sure. Because I mean, even the karmis are starting to realize that you know, there's that expression, whether you're going to have a good day or a bad day, it's up to you, right? So, but because they're not living spiritually, you know, there's some things that just overwhelm that, and they just all, you know, have a bad day. And even the most, you know, sort of mode of goodness person can still be overwhelmed. But if they have a spiritual understanding, then even the most horrible thing, like even when Purnamasi had her stroke, it was just like, I mean, it was, we kind of went, wow, this is weird. You know, our first reaction was, wow, this is a bad day. But then we started to realize, both of us actually started to realize, wow, this is just another, you know, Krishna's just changing the game plan a little bit. And we just have to surrender. And because we were able to surrender on that spiritual platform, so if we just surrender to things that Krishna throws our way and try to help others to do the same, then our life is perfect. Well, thank you all for listening so attentively, and I really appreciate that all of you are actually sustaining this temple and doing devotional service and doing every day something that will help somebody out there remember Krishna. So thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.